First and foremost, I just want to thank you for taking the time out of your life to come and share with Savannah State University student body about the documentary production and how to incorporate how writing is basically, you know, the foundation
Yes.
for creating a documentary or a film in any way of sort. Just to start, the first question is, we understand that you are a filmmaker, a business consultant, a motivational speaker, and an author. So how does writing play a key role in all of your professional endeavors, and to what extent has writing contributed to your success?
Writing has been probably the backbone of most of the things that I've done. Because before I go into a business meeting, before I go and do any consulting, before I start with the film process or writing a book, of course, there's writing involved. Everybody's so used to seeing the final product, used to seeing the screenplay or the documentary or reading the book once it's finished.
Right.
But there are many drafts that comes before that, whether it's the actual research and development, whether it's the proposals, whether it's the treatments, whether it's the many writing elements that go into the actual final product. So it dominates what I do, because even when I come to speak, I'm writing things out. I'm trying to make sure it's lined out. As you saw, I prepared a handout, and I like doing that because a lot of people, they listen, but they don't really listen. It's always good to have a handout, because if it was me, I would like to have a handout.
Right.
So I try to do things the way I would like it, as long as it's something feasible.
Right.
So writing dominates my life
Okay.
in a good way.
I was thankful for the handouts too, because I was like, I know I'm around taking pictures, but I really want to listen to this. Okay, our next question is, you directed and produced the internationally acclaimed film Stubborn as a Mule. The film has won several awards in the United States, Africa, Germany, and the United Kingdom.
Yes.
Can you explain the development and the preparation that went into the creation of this documentary?
It actually started, believe it or not, by praying. And I say that because we prayed for an idea. My partner and I, at the time, we said, you know, what is a good idea? We wanted to do something that was socially challenging, something that was just not the next best Girls Gone Wild video. It wasn't about the money. It was about really helping to shape people's perceptions, to give them some truth that they really have not really heard before or dealt with before. And so we actually came across the storyline of Stubborn as a Mule, really with W.W. Law. You may be familiar with him, or you may have heard of him. He's a local historian. He's deceased now. A strong civil rights activist, not just for the Savannah area, but really for the nation. And he had commissioned a painting that depicted the 40 Acres and a Mule, what's really known as Special Field Order Number 15. That's the actual field order that the word 40 acres and a mule, or the phrase 40 acres and a mule came from. And from that, looking at the painting, it made us look at it deeper. So what is about this? And it talked about Savannah and how this was really the first attempt to get reparations, or the attempt to give reparations to African Americans for the atrocities suffered during slavery. And it all started here. General Sherman created Special Field Order Number 15, or 40 Acres and a Mule, as is proverbially referred to. He did it here. He met with 12 ministers, and that was the meeting that was depicted in this painting. It was General Sherman meeting with these ministers, and out of that meeting, he asked, "What do you want? What do you need to go forward?" Basically, and they said, "We need land. We need to be able to support our families. We need to be able to build crops, or to build our own infrastructure, basically, to basically level the playing field, because you dealt with the people that were enslaved for 300-400 years. Now all of a sudden you're thrown out into mainstream society, and they're telling you to live, but we don't have the tools that are needed." So reparations was that first attempt. Let's give them some land. They're used to tilling the land. They're used to surviving off the land, because they're the ones that were handling the fields, doing all of that, dealing with the animals. We'll let them start there. And reading that, it was that thing that drew my attention. And it was like I said, when it comes to the documentary process, or really any research process, the question is, what do I know about the subject matter? What is interesting to me about it? Is it something that is interesting to other people? And it answered all those questions as a yes. And I said, this is something that's going to challenge some people, because reparations is a subject matter that most people want to shy away from, because they think it's about a handout. And it's not about a handout. Reparations, the word itself, means to repair the damage. And that was General Sherman's effort to repair the damage by giving the land. Now, the mule came in because they had Army surplus mules that they did not want to take back up to the north. So they said, let's give them the mules. They can use them to till the ground and use them for crop building. So that's where that actually comes from. Because if you read the actual document, the Special Field Order number 15, it says nothing about a mule. But reading other people who lived during that time and wrote about it, that's where it came from. But it was to repair the damage. And so many people, because they pull themselves away when they hear about possible money coming out of my tax-paying dollars. They're not thinking of it from the standpoint of it's coming directly out of my pocket, but they know if reparations would be given, it possibly would come from the government, which is my tax dollars at work.
Right.
So a lot of people, especially Caucasians, they tend to back away, and that's been the mode of society. I don't want to hear about it because they're asking for a handout. But in all actuality, we're not asking for a handout. Reparations was to say, let's repair the damage. And if you look at repairing the damage control is not free. If you look at some of the studies that have been done now, they've been genetic studies that show that trauma, blunt trauma, any type of trauma is passed down genetically at some level, at many levels. And so if you had a fear of spiders, or if your mother had a fear of spiders, you may have a fear of spiders and you don't know why. A spider has never bitten you, you've never encountered one, but every time you see one, you're afraid of it.
Right.
And you'll find those little things in our lives, but it's because it's been transmitted genetically. And there have been scientific tests to start proving this now. So that post-traumatic stress or post-traumatic slave disorder, as one professor who's in the documentary has labeled it, Dr. Naim Akbar, he says that it's been transmitted genetically to make us think and behave a certain way. And so the whole premise behind the documentary is let's cancel that perception that people have that it's about the money, and let them understand that in order to fix the ills of society, we have to deal with the problem. And the problem is going to require some money, because you're going to need to put people in therapy. You're going to need to educate people. You're going to need to build things around people to help them come up to the regular standard of society. And most people back away because they thought of it as from a money standpoint for so long. But when you look at Stubborn as a Mule, and it's not a controversial film, because what we did, we took the traditional U.S. history that everybody knows, and we added the black part of the U.S. history that the books don't tell you, or at least the history books don't tell you, the mainstream history books. And when you see everything line up, it fills in all the gaps. And it changes your mindset, because you have both sides to say, okay, now I can form a proper opinion, as opposed to what my mother or father or whoever was influencing me told me.
Right.
Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
I was just thinking, because when you started off saying that you prayed for an idea, I'm actually a part of a production group on campus, and we're trying to enter, I guess we kind of did more serious, funny, laughable short films, but now we're trying to transition into the serious side of things, especially to coincide with a lot of the things that have been taking place over the last couple of months and last couple of years as far as police brutality. Right. So that just kind of caught my mind. And then you talking about bringing subjects that people want to back away from to the forefront, to kind of force people to say, hey, this is a prevalent issue. You have to come face to face with this sooner or later. And I have a commentary on campus also called Out of Focus, where I try to do that with students. But on to our next question. How would you describe the difference between writing a script for a documentary versus writing a script for an original movie?
Two totally different trains of thought. Well, it depends. It can be somewhat the same and somewhat different. Somewhat the same is in the sense that there are some documentary films that have reenactments, and it's not just canned footage that you get, but it's actually you get the actors, you get all the props, you put it in place, and you give the actors dialogue. So that part of your script may be scripted just like a regular narrative. But then again, you have the other parts where in the script I may say, well, I want to put this interview from so-and-so here, and I'll get all kind of footage to back up whatever you're saying. Right. And it's basically, that's the extent of it, because you don't know what they're going to say, and you don't know, based on what they say, you don't know what kind of footage you have to get to back it up. You don't know what the B-roll will need to be. So it's different from the sense that when you do a documentary script, it actually kind of lays more of a foundation, a framework, as far as that initial script. And then when you get to the latter part, then you're able to, it's never going to look like a regular narrative script, because the narrative script as far as the interview section and the B-roll and stuff like that, it flows differently. There's no dialogue in it per se. You may have some dialogue written in it because you're going to show your time codes, but it's usually just sections of sound bites, as opposed to dialogue between multiple people flowing a certain way, unless it was a particular interview that you did with multiple individuals.
Okay.
And you had people dialoguing that way. But it's a different approach, similar but different. The very essence of it, though, and I always stress this, I didn't really talk about it today, but I always stress story. Because even though I'm doing a documentary, I'm still telling a story. And that's where a lot of, I won't say a lot, but there are some documentaries, especially early on, they kind of venture away from giving you a good story. And they say, I just give them facts. Or I want to do this and I just want the facts to be there. But people don't want to watch facts. They read books for facts. If they're watching a film, whether it's documentary or narrative, they want to see an actual storyline. So what I like to do, I like to build in the storyline. And I create a premise basically that goes back to that structure. Within that structure, I tell the story. And that's the key element that really ties all of it together. The actual writing of the script is different because with a narrative, you can actually make it say whatever you want it to say. But you're never going to know what that interviewee is going to say.
Okay, because I was just thinking back to the Tulsa, Oklahoma documentary, and that's one of the reasons why I thought it was way more interesting than just sitting and reading facts about it, was the fact that we had people that were actually alive during that time telling their stories, and the way that they constructed the story. Because in the beginning it talked about how it was such a prosperous community, and then it got to the big event. As a motivational speaker, the impact and effectiveness behind words tends to be what inspires the audience. What techniques or process do you go through to ensure that your words are imprinted within the minds and hearts of your listeners? And how has your writing skills allowed you to reach people in an effective way?
I hate to say it, but I vibe off the audience. It's because no audience will be the same. So it's like the audience we had today, and it's a different generation. And in my mind, I'm still the same as I was 20 years ago, age-wise. So my mindset is not changing as much. It's progressing, but it's not changing, if you kind of understand what I mean. Whereas you have a different mindset with this audience, to where they will look stoic, just sitting there, and you can't always judge by it. So sometimes you have to purposely go out and engage people like I did today. I went out and engaged them. I said, he may not want to talk, but I'm going to make him talk. And there was one particular guy that was sitting over here. He didn't say anything at first, but you saw he came back and answered. And sometimes you have to figure out a way to engage somebody. And I have had an instance where I had the audience stand up and yell. I've had an audience stand up and stretch. But I've had some speeches to where it was just me just in a very serious tone, just hitting the facts, because I felt that was the way the audience was receiving it, and I just went with it. And you have to kind of feel your audience, and it's a fluid process, but you have to just get in the flow, because it doesn't always start that way. And I kind of like to hang out and see the audience before I actually get started that way. I kind of know what I'm dealing with. And I know college students are totally different, but I'm the type, I'm going to deal with 5-year-olds, middle schoolers, high schoolers, it doesn't matter. I feel that God gives me the ability to reach whoever I need to reach. And it's just sometimes it's hard getting a feel on how it went. And I'll come back and ask, like I asked the question, how do you think they received it? And she's like, no, I think they did. I saw many of them writing. And from that standpoint, you value that because you are typically used to dealing with them, and you know how they tend to respond. So, and it's funny because I'm getting ready to ask you a question. How do you think they responded? How do you think they received it?
I was just about to answer that. I'm actually taking a speech course right now, and we had to give an introductory speech basically about ourselves. And the vibe that I got from the audience was what made me nervous, and because I went up there and I had all the confidence in the world, but just the way that they looked, the energy in the room, it was it was kind of hard to decipher, okay, is anybody like interested in what I have to say, or so things of that nature. Yeah, college students are definitely a difficult crowd to appeal to because our attention span is like.
Yeah, and I'll give you I'll use this as a teaching moment for you. Whenever you go into a room to speak, become the thermostat and not the thermometer.
Okay.
Do you know the difference?
Oh, yes.
Huh?
Yeah, no. Yes.
What's the symbolic difference?
Okay, the thermostat does it like kind of set how it is, how it feels in there? Okay.
The thermometer adjusts to it.
Okay.
And it reads whatever the atmosphere is giving it.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Thank
you
you
have to adjust the atmosphere as a thermostat based on where you want it to go. Just like you going and adjust the thermostat in your room. Well, I want it to be 80 degrees in here. It's very cold. You go and adjust it, and it sets the room at that temperature. But the thermostat is going to always just read what it was set to. So you have to go in and set your atmosphere. And sometimes it takes you just understanding, dealing with the crowd and how to engage people. And just never thinking about, okay, I'm going to be, I don't know how they're going to receive it.
Right.
Because my bottom line is that I'm going to walk in there, I'm going to give you what I have, and I'm going to approach it the best way, and we'll walk away. And if it didn't work, we'll try it again. That's a lesson I learned. So no, don't let the room change your atmosphere.
Okay.
And it takes practice, and some of it is gifting.
Right.
But it's a skill that can be learned. But it's an ability that some people have, and it's inherent. You probably have seen people that come into the room, and it's like everything just changes to them.
Right.
It just shifts. And I didn't realize I kind of had that gift really probably until I got married. And I've been married, going on 18 years. My wife said, you will come in and you set the atmosphere in the room. He said, because the way you walk into a room, you command attention. And it's not anything that you're trying to do. It's your presence. Your presence. It's the confidence that you bring to the room. I've always said, whenever I'm speaking, no one ever usually knows what I'm going to say. Even though I gave out that handout, I didn't flow by the handout. That was just something for people to take home with them. It covered the information on it, so somebody's not going to necessarily know if I mess up,
Right.
unless I make it obvious. So that's what you have to remember. They're not going to know that I messed up unless I make it obvious.
Okay.
So keep that in mind.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I had to take.
No, you're fine. Thank you. Thank you for that,
You're
because I
welcome.
present next Wednesday, so
Good.
it's something to keep in mind.
Good.
Okay, being that you are a Savannah State alumnus, can you describe to the current student body how important it is to embrace the writing culture?
It is important to embrace the writing culture because you're going to find it no matter where you go. Whether you go into the federal government, whether you go into regular corporate America, whether you go into the film industry, whether you become a fireman, whether you become whatever, you're going to find it at every level. There's going to be at some point in time where you're going to have to write something. Yeah, even if it's as simple as you being a stay-at-home mother, and you have to write a note for your daughter who couldn't come to school because she was sick with whatever. You have to be able to write no matter what you do, because you don't want to give off the perception that forces people away from you. Because depending on how you present your message, if it's coming across that you are an intelligent person, people will stop and listen. But the first couple of ignorant words they see written, they're like, okay, I don't know about this. And so, yeah, writing is so important. People have to understand that even the basics, and I guess the older I get, the more I see the things that I learned in school actually help me more than I ever thought. Because really putting this presentation together today, I didn't, even though I guess I kind of do it inherently, but I didn't really think about the actual writing skills that are involved.
Right.
There are a lot of writing skills involved, and it can make or break whether you get money or not, depending on the tone that you gave to somebody. And that's why you have to do your research. What are they looking for? What is their understanding? And you have to present it to the audience where they can grab a hold of it and say, okay, I understand what he's saying. I like what he's saying. And on top of that, I like him. So let's do this. And you have to find that medium. But the first thing is your communication. And in writing, even if you're not going to present something in writing, your writing helps you because it prepares you. It helps you say, okay, this is the structure of how I'm going to flow. This is what I'm going to say. And then based on that, then you go from there. So it's critical in everything that you do.
And in a sense, it protects you because, like, and the next question is about plagiarism. So,
Yes.
One obstacle that students face today is plagiarism. And although many cases of plagiarism are accidental, we want students to understand how vital it is to cite their sources. So how has citing your sources or supplying credibility to your research been a major factor in your success?
Well, it can mean being sued or not being sued, because there's so many copyrights that you have to deal with when you deal with a film. There's certain things that you have in the Creative Commons, just as long as you give them their credit. Like when you see Stubborn as a Mule, you see in the credits where I gave the photographers credit for such and such pictures because that's all they required. Mm-hmm. Now, some images I actually had to acquire a license. I had to pay for a license from the Associated Press. Mm. So even the same thing, if I use a quote in the film, not just necessarily speaking the quote, but if I have it written, I need to give credit for who actually said it, because that's plagiarism. So in the film business, you plagiarizing something could mean the difference between you making money on the film or you being sued for everything that you made plus more. Mm-hmm. So it's very important, just even as you go forth, because in the film industry, it's hard to totally protect an idea. Unless it's something that was fresh, that was written in a book, and it's copywritten, and it's all totally based on this, and it's not something that, like, if you just can't pull a story from the Bible and say, I'm going to copyright this. No, that's public domain. But if somebody else wrote a book, and you taking that book and you acquire the rights for that, then that's one thing. Somebody else just can't come and say, this is based on this book. It's somebody else's idea. Right. So it goes back to the whole plagiarism thing, even though it probably will not hit you as much in the sense of writing plagiarism, but just using other people's material or using other people's copyrights that they have without their permission.
Okay, the next question is, how can writing help an individual achieve more, not just in the workplace, but also as in person?
Writing can be many different things. One of the things writing can be is therapeutic. You find a lot of people who just write when they can't express themselves. Right. They just write, and when you're doing something like that, you can just write however you want. It's a free flow. It's your format, but it can be therapeutic. It can be a way of expressing a higher thought. One of the things I tend to use Twitter for, which I know y'all young people don't like Twitter anymore. It took me forever to go to Twitter, and y'all left me already. But with Twitter, I would put out certain thoughts that would come to my mind, just different thought-provoking things, different thoughts that hit me during the day. And at times I do a lot of it, and then I back away depending on what my schedule is. But I use that writing to actually inspire people, to help change thought, to bring a different light to a situation, to bring understanding. So it can be used in so many different ways. Sometimes it can be as simple as life or death. If a man never knew how to write danger, how would they know danger is ahead of them? So it's critical.
Yeah, that's a good point. I actually use my Twitter to, like, provoke thought, especially with because Twitter helps me find out a lot of things that I wouldn't have known just watching the news. Right. So as far as, like, issues like SCSU potentially maybe temporarily being closed and things of that nature, I also aware people that are following me about those issues that are taking place. And also I ask students that go there on Twitter, I'm like, getting them to think about the issue, because some of them, it still hasn't hit them yet. Like, you know what I'm saying? So
last 1 to 3 to 4 years maybe in vain. That's a sad situation.
Right. Okay. So the next question is, what is the most important thing that you have gained or learned from writing?
One of the most important things that I've gained from writing is that it helps you clear your thoughts. Because a lot of times we have these thoughts and they just run through our mind. They're just going this way, that way. Like, that was a good thought. Oh, it's like chasing a rabbit in the hole. You're just hopping everywhere. But say, okay, let me put that thought down. Okay, let me put this thought down. Okay, that has nothing to do with that, so I don't need that. But it just allows you that platform to be able to write your thoughts down and just kind of pull them together and say, okay, now this makes sense, I can put it together. But without having that ability to write and just kind of put your thoughts in paper, like I talked about in the workshop, the proposal, that's what it's about. It's putting those ideas out there. This is what I want to do. It's getting that thought out of your head onto paper. And then once you do that, you can make it make sense, because I think most of us have probably had a dream to where it makes no sense whatsoever because it's just random. It's all over here, all over there. But sometimes if you come back and think about it and kind of line it out, you can kind of piece it together. And that's how our thoughts are, even outside of the dream world. Is our thoughts can be very random, but sometimes if we put our random thoughts together, and it may be over a period of time, it may be God just reveals something to you over a period, and by you writing them down and going back and looking at the dots connect, and you're like, this makes sense now.
Right.
And sometimes that's the most beneficial thing, I think, from a personal standpoint. Just being able to communicate is a totally different level. You have to be able to do that, but just being able to really communicate to yourself, because sometimes you confuse yourself. I'll be the first to be like, what was that? Like, I don't know where that's going, but just when you come back and you're able to write it out, let me just write it out.
Right.
And you say, okay, this makes sense now.
Yeah, that's exactly how I am. My thoughts are constantly I have so many ideas and I write them all down, but it's like once I start something, I have a thought about something, it's kind of hard for me to finish it or like bring it together to like kind of mesh it into one solid thing. So yeah, that's one of my issues as a writer.
But it's a good, I do the same thing. I have things, I just wrote something the other day, and it's probably something I will eventually tweak, but I know I need to tweak it. And I just wrote it down on a sticky note, and I put it in my pocket. I said, I come back to it. And I have a notepad. Actually, I have several notepads. Some are full, some are not. But as things come up, you write it down.
Yeah.
You'll be able to use it one day.
Okay, the last question is, writing for some people is just as tedious as math. For those who show a lack of interest in writing, what ways would you suggest that they approach writing in order to make it better for themselves?
Start writing about something that they're interested in. That helps so much. If you can find a subject matter that's of interest to you, or that's maybe not that is so interesting to you, but that is beneficial for you, then you see the need to do it. It helps that process much easier because you do something that you love quicker, or you do something around something that you love quicker than you'll do it if you have no interest whatsoever. So just being able to find that subject matter. It's like when somebody is taking a creative writing class and they let you write on whatever you want. It's much more easier to do that as opposed to say, well, these are your topics, write something on it. Now granted, sometimes you have to do that, but to kind of get you in the mode, to get you in the process, it's good to just pick something that you're very interested in. And it's basically the research, because once you find out more information, the more information you have, the easier it is to be able to come back and put together an actual document that makes sense.
Exactly. Okay. Well, thank you once again for taking the time to sit down with us and discuss everything and share your thoughts with us.
Thank you.
I greatly appreciate it.
You're welcome.
It was a
I really
pleasure.
enjoyed it.
Thank you.